Have fun.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm just going to give it a minute to let everyone into the platform. We're happy to have everyone on today, so just bear with us while we get everybody loaded into Zoom. Again, we're just going to wait another 30 seconds or so just to let everybody in, and then we'll get started. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by LTIMindtree, From Vulnerability to Resilience, Intel-Led Security Strategies for Mitigating Cyber Risks in the BFSI Industry. I'm your host, Sarah Jackman. Before we begin the presentation, I have a few housekeeping notes for you. You are currently in listen-only mode. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can click on help or send us a chat in the webinar console. This is an interactive session, so feel free to type your questions into the question box on your webinar console, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the session. I'd like to mention that today's presentation will be recorded and available for future playback. We've got a great program lined up for you today, and to get us started, I'd like to turn it over to Anna Ko, CMO and Head of Sales for South Asia, Korea, and Taiwan at CYFIRMA. Over to you, Anna.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today for this fireside chat entitled From Vulnerability to Resilience, Intelligence-Led Security Strategies for Mitigating Cyber Risks in the financial services industry. My name is Anna, and I'm our moderator for today's session. I understand many of you are joining us from L&T and LTI organizations with roles that span across account servicing, sales, pre-sales, solution architects, and more. And all of us here are joined by our common interest in cybersecurity, and in particular, cybersecurity in the BFSI space. So today we have two very distinguished experts with us who will shed light on the evolving threat landscape in one of the most targeted industries and the strategies which defenders can take even as hackers and cybercriminals become more innovative, more creative. So please join me in welcoming Saurabh La, who is the president of CYFIRMA, heading up cyber research and customer success. And let me quickly introduce the company CYFIRMA. CYFIRMA is an external threat landscape management platform company founded by Mr. Kumar Ritesh as the head of our cyber intelligence and counterterrorism of a national intelligence agency. He has honed his expertise in cybersecurity, working in the front lines of cyber warfare. Ritesh founded CYFIRMA to address an urgent gap in cyber defense, helping governments and businesses turn the security approach from reactive to proactive, using quality intel to guide security strategies. The company has built the world's first ETLM, external threat landscape management platform called Decipher, where attack surface intelligence, vulnerability intelligence, brand intelligence, digital risk monitoring, situational awareness, and cyber intelligence are presented on a single pane of glass, connecting the dots between threat actor, motive, campaign, and method, and designed to give defenders early warning to attacks targeting them. We also have another very distinguished cybersecurity expert, Mr. Dilip, Global Head of Cybersecurity Technology Office and Center of Excellence from LTIMindtree. Dilip is a hardcore IT professional with 2 decades of varied experience in IT and information security domains. He's a seasoned hands-on leader with expertise and proven record of developing and implementing information systems and information security controls based on global best practices that improve and contribute to the organization's efficiency and data security. Dilip's experience encompasses various industry verticals, both across Indian multinationals as well as international multinationals. Before taking on the role of the global head of cybersecurity practice at LTIMindtree, Dilip was the CISO and IT controller of LTI and responsible for enterprise information security strategy and governance program, management for LTI and all LTI clients serviced via LTI Global Delivery Centers. So Saurabh and Dilip, thank you for being here with us today. And to kick things off, let's dive into the world of cybersecurity in the FSI space. And let me share a report that was published by CYFIRMA Research not too long ago, sometime in the month of August, on the latest threats facing or targeting the industry. And Saurabh, may I invite you to walk us through the key findings of this report?
Thank you, Anna, and welcome also to my fellow panelists, Dilip. Now, CYFIRMA is monitoring almost 2,000 cyber criminals and 2,800 cyber criminal campaigns. We have clients ranging from various industries, and I can very confidently say that BFSI is almost the highest targeted industry, in addition to the next close one, which is healthcare. Now, when we look at BFSI and we look at all the campaigns that are running around the BFSI space, these are campaigns which are targeting multitude of organizations in this space. And if you really see what we have observed in terms of attacks being executed by various cyber criminal groups and cartels, the campaigns have really gone up. In the April, it was close to 11, increasing to 9, and then, of course, June ended at a higher of 17. So you can see almost at times double-digit growth in month on month. And of course, when we move into quarters, depending on the financial years in this part of the world, differing financial years and regulatory compliances, these campaigns are only going to go up. So that is a trend we have observed. Now, if we look at suspected threat actor actions, well, I cannot name any one. And again, we are not trying to name or bash any geography, but we see certain language-specific campaigns being run by specific threat actors originating or concentrating on a particular space of language. And in this case, at least you can see Mission 2025, which is our call sign of APT 41, or the Finn Group or the Lazarus Group, many of which are state-sponsored as well as various other script kiddies or various ransomware groups or gangs who are in it for making a quick buck. They are quite active. And these threat actors and cyber criminals are always collaborating. So it was never a situation that one particular cartel or one particular threat actor acts in silo. In fact, they are collaborating much more than what cyber defenders like Dilip and myself are collaborating, unfortunately. Then when you look at the next spectrum around, let's say, phishing attacks, we know, right, and this is one of the vulnerabilities I'll be talking about in the later part of the forum today. In fact, no region is spared. But if you really call out based on the quantum of attack, a huge amount is seen in Europe, followed by the United States. And let me also very unequivocally call out that Asia Pacific is not far away, which means the geographies of India and surrounding countries within India in the Asia Pacific space, you can see that the amount is really high. And these are some of those confirmed campaigns which are running out there. These are not necessarily carpet bombing campaigns which are targeting individuals. These are specific to campaigns being run for the finance industry. It's a very alarming number, which reiterates probably what Dilip has seen as well as what CYFIRMA is able to see, that BFSI is the industry that is really heavily targeted. Now, if you look at specific areas of ransomware, as I was explaining, our researchers are always on top of the data collected by our platform and our engines, and we are validating some of those confirmed incidents out there, and possibly some of the victims which are confirming that yes, they have seen an attack. And usually victims may not go socially if they are not sharing this in a socially responsible manner. But you will see files being uploaded on some of the OSINT platforms. They have signatures attributed to a particular organization, which will also help us confirm that some of these organizations are being hit. You can see the jump. Really, it's like 5x or 6x jump in month on month, which is a very alarming trend. So it is important for cyber defenders in BFSI space to understand what's really lurking and brewing in their external threat landscape, of which ransomware is by far the most credible and critical set of cyber threat that every BFSI industry organization really faces. Then you look at various sectors or subsectors, because when we interact with some of our clients and customers, and there is this notion, oh, we are big banks, only big banks are impacted, co-op banks are not impacted, or some of the smaller money lender institutions are not impacted, or the insurance industry is impacted less. I can assure you the footprint we are able to see is across all the different subsectors. So if there is a myth at all in any of our participants that there is a particular subsector in the BFSI space which is more targeted and the other is less targeted, I can assure you, based on what we are able to see, each and every of those subsectors is equally targeted. It is just a choosing of a cyber criminal, wherein when they carry out some kind of an open source reconnaissance against your brand, your organization, your tech stack, or your industry of operation or geography of operation, where do you fit in? And where do you fit in terms of ease of attack and what they really want to gain out of it? Is it just financial impact, or is it some reputational and brand impact, being even, a motivation being at many times geopolitical considerations and scenarios? So these are just some of the salient points. And I would invite all the speakers to read our research reports. We, in fact, release a research report on an industry every week, where we do detailed insights around trends we are able to see and what to expect for every industry sector, which we are able to observe in terms of attacks and some of the clients that we are supporting. But at the same time, trying to look at some of the geopolitical scenarios or considerations. Or you could have vulnerabilities or threat actor actions because, hey, we are in the thick of managing and observing the threat actor actions, their TTPs, the evolving TTPs, new cyber attacks coming up, and how are they changing their modus operandi. So based on that, for the global or the general good and giving back to the community, we usually release these kind of research reports, and I would invite all the participants to go ahead and read some of those reports. You will gain a lot around the understanding of what's really brewing in your external threat landscape, because you can have the best of the controls, but if you do not know what to insert into your controls and into your perimeter defense systems, if you're missing the neuro center as to what is really brewing out there and what you should be defending against, I think our effectiveness is challenged. And cybercrime is an industry. The cyber criminals are ever evolving. So I think defenders like you and us need to evolve as well. Thank you,
right.
Anna,
Thank you.
and back to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Saurabh. So that was a quick overview of the threat landscape update provided by CYFIRMA Research. And, Saurabh, when we looked at these research findings, right, and these key vulnerabilities that is faced by BFSI customers, it's constantly evolving, right? Even when we talk about ransomware. Yeah, this is your number one threat right now, and that cuts across almost every industry, BFSI in particular, right? So there's sort of vulnerabilities have evolved over time. Attack methods have changed over time, and we're going to expect new challenges as well. Could you just tell us a little bit more around, from a regional nuances perspective, right? The threats across Asia, is it distinctly different from threats faced by customers out in the US, out in the EU? Is there anything at all that we should be aware of so that we can be better advisor to our customers?
No, thank you. And that's a very pertinent question, Anna. I'll start with the regional nuances, and I think I'll also then invite Dilip for his expressing his viewpoints. And then we will go back to the overall topic of what are those key vulnerabilities that BFSI as an industry is facing and what we anticipate they should be facing. So one of the things we all need to understand is there are various regulatory variations in this region. And that plays a very important role when it comes to regional nuances, which influence cybersecurity vulnerabilities in the BFSI sector. Every country, and before this role, I was managing Prudential ASEAN, and every region, every country had a very distinctive regulatory framework. As an example, in some of the geographies we are operating as CYFIRMA, and I would not like to call them out, you still have SMSs being sent out. And we all know, and Anna and I are based in Singapore, we all know that there was a huge smishing scam last year from one of the well-known banks wherein customers lost millions of dollars because an SMS came out looking like it has come from a bank and telling customers to do a series of actions. Now, when you have, you look at the diaspora of this region, right? It's a very young population. It's a very internet savvy population. They're all online, or it's the older generation, and they may not necessarily have nuances around some of these variations. And they might think that some of these variations are quite normal because they would say that, hey, there are regulations being updated by the government, different laws being enacted, and it is very difficult for an end customer or even sometimes institutions or big banks to stay on top of it. So in that kind of a situation, right, it becomes very difficult to really identify what is real and what is no longer real. That's just the regulatory variation. But if you really look at the attack landscape, and because of the geopolitical nature of countries like India and various countries in Southeast Asia, we are seeing a lot of adversary action, especially around state-sponsored threat actors. Now, these are threat actors which are really motivated with geopolitical scenarios. Chandrayaan-3 got launched. There were campaigns CYFIRMA uncovered, which were phishing campaigns. You have G20. We all know I was in India last week, and there was a lot of hump around G20, but so was the cybercriminal activities which were, on overdrive. And these state-sponsored threat actors, they are not really driven by an ROI. It's not a concept that I need to spend $100 to gain, I should be gaining 1,000 in return. They are really being driven by geopolitical motivations. That is one spectrum of it. And the other spectrum is some of the script kiddies. And I think I'll just invite Dilip before I finish this point, and hopefully Dilip agrees to my viewpoint, that the friction of entering into the cyber criminal space, specifically in this region with the wide diaspora of population, is really low. You can buy a ransomware or a malware code for as low as $15 US, and it comes with on-call support. So imagine if somebody wants to execute a financial outcome, right? You have a university student sitting in some part of this world, and they want to make some quick bucks, $1,000, $2,000. Executing that kind of an attack on a MSME financial unit in India or this part of the world is not a big thing anymore. Dilip, what do you think about it?
Definitely, Saurav, and thank you so much for the wonderful insights. So when you look at today's attacks, it's not only about people able to buy ransomware kits for just $15 off the market from dark web, but also ransomware being provided as a service with call center, and they would run the entire campaign for you and give you. In fact, they break up the entire campaign into multiple teams so that they can avoid getting detected. There might be a handler who might be from another region. There might be an executionist who might be from another region. And eventually, the one who actually executes the attack and brings you back the money from the mules would be another team altogether. So they are running a complete syndicate, which basically allows them to run the campaign effectively without being detected and be very effective because of the volume that they run upon.
Yes,
That is correct.
So yeah, so Dilip, in your years helping customers in this particular space or in this industry itself, right? Could you just walk us back a little bit? 5 years ago, defenders were all worried about something, right? And versus what they're worrying about these days, has that changed?
Very much, Anna. In fact, it's completely a different world. In fact, since COVID took over the entire globe for us. So when you look at 5 years ago, when we used to look at how security was being assessed or how BFSI as an industry used to look at security, it was a very closed, guarded fortress that used to manage within their heavily fortified data centers, which were within their control. They had exactly details about what assets are available in their data center and what is exposed to the internet. Their attack surface was very minimal in those scenarios. Come today, when COVID took over, the first thing that hit us all was work from anywhere. All our assets, all our systems from the organization protections moved out to the respective homes or cafes, or you can say WeWork kind of offices, where you do not have your same protection for the perimeter defenses that you used to deploy for all your assets. So everything moves on to the edge. That's the first part. The user became more exposed to the internet, and hence the attack surface increased multifold for every organization. The number of campaigns that were being launched earlier for the limited users who were exposed to the internet versus the ones which are now with everybody on the internet has just blown out of proportion. And the attack or the click rate that we used to call earlier from a phishing campaign, which could be say 1 in 300, it just blew up and became nearly around 70% more exposed for every organization, thus giving that much more advantage to the attacker to be able to make more money out of this and make their attacks more successful. I think it just changed completely in those scenarios. The quality of attacks also has been becoming more sophisticated now, as we say. I think malware, ransomware, which earlier started off, it was all about, initially started off with nuisance and disruptions. Then it started getting into bringing the system to a halt and then demanding ransom. And now it's about exfiltrating data and then constantly demanding ransom back again from the organization, or even exposing or just leaking all the data. And come next, the future generation that we're looking at, if with quantum computing, which is just around the corner if it comes to life, the data, even though if it is encrypted within the organization and leaked out, and which is right now useless to the attacker, if quantum computing really succeeds, that data is just about to be exposed any day, anytime.
Yeah. So that's where
sorry,
yes,
go ahead.
sorry, please.
If I may just add to what Dilip mentioned, right? There is another stage of ransomware which CYFIRMA is able to see. It's not just establishing persistence, encrypting data, stealing data, and selling and demanding ransom. We are also starting to see that the ransomware groups are keeping their small footprint still in that environment to enable it back at a later stage to execute the next stage of attack. So once a ransomware victim, you will be a repeat ransomware victim. So it's no longer the double extortion. It's actually gone down to fourth stage. And to address the quantum computing issue that Dilip mentioned, yes, that's around the corner. But we are already seeing AI-powered attacks where the effectiveness of attacks has really leapfrogged. Now you are able to see certain click percentage on phishing campaigns. You have smishing, you have vishing, CYFIRMA presented, what we expect to see in this year and next year, deepfakes really taking over. And I have seen some examples of deepfake, Anna, wherein it is very difficult to make it distinct from the real self to the fake self, because we have told to the cybersecurity community that deepfake will substitute phishing, because that's the next avenue of attack. But really, it's all about all these scenarios and the fact that in some space 20 years ago, as Dilip was highlighting, and as I've been also part of various BFSI organizations, it was a very close-guarded industry. With the invent of virtual working and with the invent of various outsourcing vendors and supply chain attacks, because, hey, all of us I'm using an Apple iPhone, or I'm using a Windows, or I'm using SolarWinds as an example to patch, and if I download the wrong patch, that's the software or supply chain attack that is really happening. And I think for BFSI, it is very important, because unless each of those links are secure, they are made aware, and they are in tune with the cyber criminal activities, we'll always be playing a catch-up game in this industry. Sorry, Anna, back to you.
Yeah. So that's all. We are painting a very dire situation here for our audience, right? And it's like as if the defender versus the attacker. The winners are clearly the attacker. I hate to think so, and I sincerely hope that there are new ways of countering all these new and emerging attacks. And as we go heavily into digitalization, even more so, and it's again accelerated by the pandemic, hopefully new strategies can come to play, right? That's why today's session, we talked about an Intel-led way of looking at cybersecurity. Now, that brings me to the second question. Intel-led security strategies and how these strategies have evolved over the years, and explaining to our audience how intelligence-driven approaches can help organizations in the BFSI space stay ahead of cyber threats, and what kind of intelligence sources and technologies would be integral to these strategies. By the sheer fact that intelligence, it's all about two things, right? Number one, accuracy and relevance, and of course, actionable, right? We all know from the world outside of cyber, right? If we receive a wrong intel, we take a wrong action, and that has got very horrible consequences. So could anyone just kind of jump in and share regarding Intel-led strategies and how that has changed?
Maybe Dilip, if you're okay, I could
maybe
start,
Dilip,
and
yes.
invite you to jump in. So it is very important for us to realize that there is a need to move from reactive stage to proactive to predictive. That is where the value add of Intel-led security strategies are. Now, if you look at 20 years ago, it was a traditional security. Something happens, we will react to it, and we will go ahead and remediate and move to the next stage. Then came the scenario wherein threat intelligence was a buzzword, and we have been at the receiving end, wherein we would be buying tools, they'll be analyzing data, and that analysis will be sold as something that is threat intelligence, the emerging view of threat intelligence. It's almost like me telling to Dilip that it rained in Delhi yesterday, so please carry an umbrella in Bangalore today. That was the scenario we had translated into. The real intelligence-driven security is to look at it in a holistic picture. Are you able to have a visibility around what's really brewing outside your perimeter? Because clearly all of us have very good understanding and control of our perimeter defenses and what is really happening inside the perimeter. Do we know intelligence around what are those porous entry points and what are those porous attack surfaces? Do I, as a CISO of a BFSI organization, have a control on my shadow IT, forgotten IT, redundant IT? Because I can have the best of the platinum grade firewalls out there. But if a workload is initiated on an Amazon S3 or an Azure, and that is connected to my environment, but there is no technology and no visibility around it, my defense strategies will always be catching up. Do I have an understanding that there is an impersonated domain? Let's say tomorrow there is an impersonated Twitter handler impersonating Dilip or myself, and we make that impersonated Twitter handler makes a comment around this webinar around our strategies as organizations. That can have a ripple effect in your brand reputational. It can lead to financial, of course, damages, but more importantly, customer loyalty. So I think intelligence-driven approach, and I will invite Dilip also to it, is trying to gain visibility and trying to understand and move from a reactive to a proactive to a predictive stage. And always understand as a CISO that there are only two stages of cybersecurity. One, my organization is hacked and I know. And two, my organization is hacked and I don't know. It's not a question of if, but when. And how can I gain understanding and visibility around it? And how can I master my frameworks, procedures, tactics, controls, understanding of adversary, and really mastering my limited resources in the right direction is the differentiation that intelligence-led security strategies, in my opinion, will bring to organizations under the BFSI industry. Dilip, please add on from your viewpoints.
Thanks, Saurabh. You put it very well, in fact. So when we look at bad actors, what do they want today? They want the data, but ultimately they want money. They want to get gains out of it, or they want to reach a motive, which could be a state-sponsored attack, for example. And hence the attacker tactics are only constantly evolving so that they stay ahead one step from detection. While raw data is available in most of the organizations, we all, as per mandates from not in compliance from regulations, but also from best practices, do maintain logs. But the raw data on its own cannot protect any organization or bank from cyber threats. Instead, you need highly trained professionals who understand how to turn this data into intelligence. The first part is about getting that context. Second is about you have too many threat feeds coming in, but unless those feeds are contextualized or personalized to your environment, your technology stack, your geopolitical stances, and your industry, those elements would not really give you a focused intelligence, which could be for threat actors and campaigns which are targeted in your industry, around your peers and your geos. You have a lot of vulnerabilities out there that any organization today faces. I don't think there would be any organization which would have zero vulnerabilities today, because that's always a catching up game as and when new 0 days are exposed, new exploits are available, and the likes. And it's always a cat and mouse game when you look at it, when you've got 10,000 vulnerabilities in an organization, but only 5 people there to really patch them. Now, how do we go about those? Again, threat intelligence plays a vital role in these scenarios where it helps you contextualize what vulnerabilities do actually have exploits available in the market. What could be the complexity of the attacks because of those vulnerabilities getting exploited? And what would be the impact to the organization based on the data that is there on the asset? Those intelligences, again, play a very vital role from a strategy perspective. And when you come back to your security operations center and security operations itself, again, contextualizing events, correlating them, prioritizing the alerts, which could help get much more focused energies in the right direction when you are actually in the midst of a cyber attack, or early warning signals in order to prevent an attack, as you said about the preventive and predictive strategies that we are headed towards. I think that's where is the true power of threat intelligence, where multi-layered intel can help bring the right insights, and with the right skill sets or the right partner from an MSP perspective, can help you get into a modernized SOC perspective and provide the predictive and proactive SOC services.
That brings us very nicely into our third question, where it's all about building cyber resilience, right? And that's is a top priority for all organizations. And the practical steps and best practices that the financial services sector needs to implement in order to enhance their ability to withstand cyber shocks, right? And we know threat intelligence is an important component for cyber defense. And from an MSSP point of view, would TI, how would you use TI to deliver on the promise of cyber resilience? So from the perspective of personal experience, as well as what LTIMindtree has been helping, or how LTIMindtree has been helping customers. Could you just share your experience with us?
Sure, Anna. So when you look at an MSSP service being provided for customers, how we help today our customers build a modernized SOC is one, putting the right strategy and framework in place with regards to zero trust architecture itself, getting the solutions integrated together with the power of AI and ML baked in, which can consume the right intelligence feeds from the likes of CYFIRMA, for example, which help us get the contextualization and personalization to respective customers by their industry, their geo, their lines of business, and their external attack surface, their digital brand monitoring itself, and eventually getting the outside in view as well as insider threat perspectives into the organization events. That helps us prioritize the alerts, get much more focused energies towards the right vulnerabilities to be addressed in a prioritized manner with the limited resources that are always there to really attend to and mitigate those threats. And at the point that sort of spoke about earlier when we started off the discussion, where attackers don't only just exploit once, but they keep it persistent and they exploit again and again and again. And that's where, again, threat intelligence, getting the right details of TTPs into your modernized SOC helps you bring in that defense mechanism to identify early if any such threat actors are present in your organization, if it starts getting activated, and if it's trying to move in the organization, so that you can really catch it early on and put the right strategy in place for the right playbooks to contain and recover from such incidents ahead of time. So I think it's not coming back to the source point which you mentioned earlier. It's not about if, but when an organization will be attacked, and hence it is all about cyber resiliency being prepared to handle a breach and then respond and contain it ahead of time, and avoid maximum possibility of damages to the organization.
And from a LTIMindtree has been around for a very long time, and LTI organization as a whole, right? And helping hundreds and thousands of customers throughout all these years. When we looked at the sort of help and expert support that the organization offers customers, could you just tell us a little bit more on how that is differentiated from any other MSSP provider in the market?
Sure. So when we provide services in similar domain from a threat protection and defense perspective for cyber resiliency services to our customers, one, our holistic approach to make it into a platform-based model, which allows getting the right contextualization for feeds by understanding the customer's line of business and their landscape, along with their hosting and the kind of attacks that could really happen in their industry. We feed those information into the systems. We ensure that those contextualizations are done ahead of time as part of our build stage itself. And as and when the intel feeds are fed, getting into the events, we validate those events. We ensure that it's a constant validation and rebuilding of the platform, which allows you to ensure that you are constantly weeding off the false positives, getting it more and more stronger on the intelligence, realistic mapping, and getting much more focused intelligence coming into the respective tenant for the customer. Eventually, it also requires a combination of skilled resources, which are able to utilize threat intelligence and put in the right level of rules, which can leverage the contextualization into the SOC and bring in the early warning signals, so that we don't have to wait for a breach to really happen, but rather find out the anomalies in the system, identify early on, and bring the preventive controls, which can avoid the attack to really happen to start with.
Yeah, I think that's really highly valued by customers across all spectrum, across all industries. The ability to have a partner working with them side by side as they deal with cyber war that impacts them one way or another. So I think LTIMindtree plays that role very well for our BFSI customers. So yes, Saurabh, you've got something.
Just to add a
Yes.
couple of points, what Dilip has mentioned. I think it is very important to have a technology and a partner like LTIMindtree and a technology like ones provided by CYFIRMA to give a very clear real-time assessments around external threats and risks facing a particular organization. It is personalized and relevant for them rather than giving the generic nature that is seen out there. That is stage number one around cyber resilience. As Dilip mentioned, right, it's also about employee training. But the game here is not about doing or carrying out general employee training. If you are facing a particular kind of attacks or threats on risks, it is pertinent to train employees and vendors and the overall ecosystem around it. So if you are seeing a particular technique being used by, let's say, a cyber criminal of a particular origin, and they are known to be carrying out attacks, or let's say an attack signal that has been picked up by CYFIRMA and acted by our colleagues in LTIMindtree, it is more relevant to train employees in trying to handle that kind of situation. Now, that is at an employee level, but more importantly, to strengthen and really make our environment better protected. It's around utilizing intelligence to drive our remediative actions. As an example, patch management, vulnerability management. Yes, you might have 1,500 vulnerabilities in your environment, but do you know which one of those are more relevant for you? Do you know what is their impact, or how many of those are resulting into a cyber criminal activity or campaigns being monitored? Because if you know out there, and that is what a platform like CYFIRMA presents a very clear risk rating, then our colleagues from LTIMindtree will be able to pick that up and give better protection, because we would be probably, as an example, remediating a vulnerability which might just have an industry CVSS score of 3.1, but because of the personalization, contextualization, attribution to that particular client, its industry, its geography, its tech stack, and any specific trends we are able to see, maybe the risk score could be very high, telling our colleagues and together working with our colleagues from LTIMindtree to really go ahead and, execute those patches immediately rather than waiting for 3 to 6 months. Another aspect, and another 2 points, and then I'll pause. One is also around, your third-party risks. It is very important to have a real-time visibility around what the third-party and fourth-party risks and their resiliency is around, because we can keep our perimeters really secure, our controls really tight, but all it needs is an exploitation of a similar vulnerability in a third party and a direct route towards us. And at the same time, as Dilip was mentioning, it's about understanding what are those scenarios which could be exposed of, because it's not a question of if, but when. So if the technology picks up that, Clop ransomware is being heavily exploited in your industry, you're better off preparing your remediation plans, your incident management plans in such a manner that we are all ready to address that kind of a scenario, should that be seen in our environment through any footprint or any porous entry points that it can see. So I think just wanted to summarize a few around what Dilip had mentioned in terms of how to really work and building those cyber resiliencies, utilizing, I would still call it ETLM and not just threat intelligence viewpoints.
Definitely, Saurabh. And just to add on, another use case which definitely helps us a lot for our customers today is not only about proactive and predictive threat intelligence, but also risk management itself. So whenever the customers are, for example, engaging into a new technology, a new industry, or for example, a new geo, this threat intelligence really helps them take decisions of what could be the potential risk in adopting that vendor, that technology, that geo, and from a cyber perspective, and what controls or compensating control that they need to really deploy in order to be able to be proactive in their defense strategy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think this is all very helpful because all these techniques and strategies are absolutely essential for any defender to at least get an opportunity to get a step ahead of their adversaries, right? Now, I think both of our experts here, they've been in industry for a significant amount of time, working with many different customers across many different industries, right? It'd be great if you could share, an example of how, an example, ideally a customer in the BFSI space. If it's not, that's fine as well, right? Anonymous, no mentioning of names of customers, and how they have a recent threat, a recent kind of threat that they have been faced with, and how you and your team have played that role to help them overcome that situation. So may I invite Dilip to have a go at this?
Sure, let me give it a shot. We had one of this customer that was in the BFSI space, and they had a footprint in the cloud, which they were not fully aware of with the number of workloads out there. Now, some of the workloads did not have the traditional security controls that were deployed from the bank perspective. And while the others had the EDR and the other protection controls which were required. The ones which were not protected, apparently one of them was affected by a ransomware. And this system now apparently was trying to move laterally for the threat perspective to the other systems in that same instance or the same workload subscription. And the moment it started trying to ping into the system which was protected from the EDR and the controls and had the right threat intelligence feeds coming in from the latest attack and the latest TTPs available, it triggered the alarm on that protected asset. Now, the moment that came in, we got to know the patient zero related threat translations backwards when we started investigating and trying to find out. Though the unprotected systems did get encrypted, it helped us early on to use the EDR signals. One, to protect the other systems which were in the same subscription. Secondly, because that cloud subscription was also tying back through the VPC and connectivity to the on-premise assets, the protection was early on added on to the entire segment to avoid any infiltration into data center and other assets which could have really caused much higher damage. So in such scenarios, while we could not prevent a non-protected asset or non-known asset, that's where the point of visibility which Saurabh and I have been harping since the start of the session. It's very important that you need to know what you have in your stack or in your armory. One, to be able to protect them and control them. And the one which you do not have still, they have to have the right intelligence to be able to identify the risk in the environment that is coming in, to be able to early on identify a risk and protect from them.
Yeah. So rightly, so well said, right? You cannot protect what you cannot see, right? So that visibility is also very important from understanding your assets and where they are. I think cloud weaknesses or cloud, the hyperscalers, the promise of the cloud. I think to some extent, those promises have been delivered, maybe a little too well, and at the expense of cyber and the big rush to go to the cloud. We do forget that cybersecurity is something that has got to be running in tandem, side by side. Ideally, a little bit step ahead, before you can't jump in onto, spinning off yet another cloud instance. And hopefully you remember that the development cloud instance that the team built up 3 months ago, you managed to shut it down when the project is over, which you'll be surprised. I think many of us have been guilty of that, right? Forgetting those instances, and that brings about weaknesses. Saurabh, please share an example of how you may have helped our customers in a space to handle some threats in recent times.
So one of the reasons, thank you, Anna, and thank you, Dilip, as well, for sharing that example on cloud weakness. I had a similar example. So I'll now turn to the traditional attack vector, phishing. So we had this client which received a phishing from a lookalike domain. Now, lookalike or impersonated domains are something which are a very important aspect of digital risk pillar on our technology. Now, this client was onboarded on our technology. That lookalike domain was presented. They delayed in carrying out a business impact analysis and initiating a takedown request with CYFIRMA. In that short span of time, and this was almost 24 to 48 hours only, bang came a phishing email impersonating the CEO of the company to one of the procurement managers, telling them to execute a particular instruction. And the procurement manager, right in the middle of the day, managing 20, 30 different key activities, ended up clicking on it. Now, one of the things which happened well in this case is because our constant real-time feeds around impersonated domains and IOCs were being fed into their SIEM and SOAR integration, it immediately got picked up and flagged. Now, obviously, what then happened is we worked with the team to carry out very clear static and dynamic analysis of that particular email, doing all the analysis, as well as attribution, correlation, and a lot of context around who might be the cyber criminal. Is it a carpet bombing campaign, or is it something which is targeted towards them? Of course, it was an impersonated domain, so it came out as a very clear cyber criminal activity from a particular geography targeting their brand. And there were a series of other emails which did come, but by that time, the client had already blocked the domain at the O365 and other perimeter defenses. Now, where we also helped the client to mitigate not only the existing one, ring fence that particular user, of course, initiate certain remediative actions like log the account, log the user for some time, do not immediately change the password, but subsequently change it, introduce a different kind of an MFA, because that is another trend we are seeing, that if you are just utilizing one particular type of MFA, that might get compromised over a period of time, SMSs being the most common ones. But we were able to work with them in trying to understand how to avoid these kind of situations or scenarios, have some kind of a notification on the email that this email has come from outside your domain. To the physical eye, when you are in the middle of 20, 30 emails, sometimes that just one banner can help avoid you from clicking one of that. And then, of course, executing specific awareness programs to make sure that not only reactive controls are in place, but the awareness and proactive controls are in, measures are in place. So all what I'm explaining to you happened over a period of 1.5 months. But as a summary, we were able to help the client through our technology, through our attribution engines, to better understand, better control the attack, and to make their procedures and standards and frameworks more resilient, as well as help them advise the right employee awareness programs, which is in sync with the evolving threat landscape that particular client was facing.
That's a lot, right? A lot to take in terms of how the client has gone through, starting from a simple lookalike domain and how that became a very huge problem, phishing and social engineering, right? That is not going to go away. And we talked a little bit earlier around new threats, right? So deep fake technology is definitely that thing to watch out for. If we are not already being very alerted to that, we should, because we are seeing signals that threat actors are actively leveraging deep fake technology to ensure that their phishing and social engineering campaigns are successful. Now, let's talk a little bit about looking forward, because in recent times, there's been huge transformative thinking in our IT space, right? primarily around generative AI, and that has kind of taken the whole world by storm. So everyone is going in with, I'm AI this and I'm AI that, right? And so are hackers, right? I'm AI this and I'm AI that as well, right? As cyber defenders, as cybersecurity experts, Dilip, could you share with us, how are we going to keep chasing this, right? And as threat actors leverage the new tech, do we do that? How are we doing that? And what actions our customers in our industry can essentially do as they see the technology kind of speed past them? Yeah.
So, and I think when you're looking at the newest technologies coming in, we touched upon them in the earlier discussions also. But yes, generative AI, deepfakes, LLM, I think these are now becoming more and more a reality where it's being used by attackers very aggressively. While we, from a general people perspective, use ChatGPT, there are almost 12 different versions already for the dark side of GPT already launched out today, used by hackers globally, and are much more powerful and having a much larger set of data to really play with and learn from, which allows them to be ahead of us today. So I think that's where we have to now start adopting how to bring in the threat intelligence and the power of AI as well as LLM into our own defense strategies. How can we enable our cyber defenders to be able to take actionable intelligence from our data, accurate intelligence from our data, and go for targeted protection mechanisms or targeted detection mechanisms? Today, threat intelligence is being fed by most of the customers, but what they do not do is how they can bring that intelligence with a nudge to the SOC analyst on, this is what I see. I suggest you go and block this, as well as I suggest you put these additional rules for heightened monitoring. Can that be deployed? That's what we help our customers today from an LTIMindtree perspective to bring in the modernized SOC story to the table. That's how we are helping detect faster, do faster with, or something that we say is do more with less, basically. So the SOC analyst, the number of people, you cannot just keep expanding based on number of customers or the number of systems that you are monitoring. You still have to catch up, and hence using the power of AI and ML and threat intelligence contextualization, getting accuracy, getting the actionable intelligence to the table, helping the SOC analyst really pick up the right signals, right detection strategies, as well as having the right response playbooks defined from a SOAR perspective or a manual playbook perspective, both, which helps them reach the detection as well as the prevention controls in time. So that's definitely one thing that I would recommend to our audience on the call today. And second aspect, breaches would happen. There's no option out of it. But having a response strategy for any cyber incident, how you deal with it, which teams will be involved, and how would you really act during that crisis is very important to have defined within an organization. And lastly, getting training for employees who are your first line of defense, as well as their cyber teams, is very important part of your overall defense framework. Because how much of a technology you put, end of day, it's humans who are going to be running the technology or humans who are running the business. And they are always susceptible to the new age attacks, be it generative AI, be it deepfakes, and the likes. The attacks are getting more realistic. It becomes more and more difficult, not only for the end users, but also our own technology and cyber professionals to really detect at times. And that's where I think it will require a lot of training and understanding of these technologies and putting in the right perspectives to defend from those attacks.
Right. When we talk about the new attacks or emerging threats, at the end of the day, the partnership between business and tech needs to be tight, right? It's overall risk management. Whether you're having a conversation at the SOC level, the security teams or all the way up to board level, everyone needs to be on the same page when you look at cybersecurity and prioritizing it accordingly. And as you so rightly put, Dilip, at the end of the day, our resilience is, after the fact, right? If you've been attacked, what do you do next? And having that single, consistent, coherent way of handling or countering these threats is extremely important. And Saurabh, in your view, when we looked at all these new threats, does it give us a little bit, does it makes it, do we feel that sense of helplessness, because we are so close to the action and trying to stop it before it actually hits the customer, right? And when you see whatever strategies that we have in place, or what strategies customers have in place, it does feel a little bit, I don't know, do you feel positive that we are all in the right direction and there's hope for everyone?
No, absolutely, Anna. And I personally go with this narrative, and let's not take it out of context, that offense is the best defense. And in every challenge, opportunity is presented. So if you do not understand our external threat landscape, if you do not have a view of what is really evolving and don't have a visibility and use that as the cornerstone for our cybersecurity strategy, as Dilip pointed out, then we are ourselves to be blamed. As an example, I have heard so many conversations, we are moving to cloud because we want to save cost. That's really not the intent. And if you're going to save cost, it's by not clicking few of those check boxes, which is going to compromise your security. So you better have the right cyber cloud security strategy in place. You better have the right awareness programs in place. You better have the right threat-led penetration testing activities in place so that you are better prepared. You have the right visibility. Because looking at the cybercrime economy and the landscape, things like your advanced persistent threats, or APT threats as we call it, they are there. They're always going to be there. The script kiddies are always going to be there. The AI being utilized for carrying out attacks is always going to be there. How we as cyber defenders can use those technologies to run faster correlation, faster attribution, do not spend time in collecting generic data, but get something personalized to you, which is relevant to you. Do not have an information overload. I think Dilip and I have talked about this in the last 1 hour, and how we are very careful going with an approach of, zero trust architecture, collaborating and sharing information. It's not about keeping it to myself because, hey, I might have seen an incident, but me sharing it out there to the wider world might just help. So when we have all this stacked together, absolutely there is no reason that while the cybercrime landscape is evolving, the cyber criminals are evolving, their utilization of the technology is evolving, we ourselves will also be evolving in defending ourselves. And if you do it the right way, utilize the right technology, have the right partners with the right resources like LTIMindtree, I think it is a win-win combination, and we are here to stay and we are here to fight.
Well said, well said. So we are well past our hour, and Dilip, do you have one advice to customers in the BFSI space, say for the next 24 months, right? A couple of key actions that they have to take against this backdrop of new and emerging threats?
So Anna, coming back to the point, you can't protect what you can't see. So definitely visibility starts as the basic point or the foundation for any cyber defense or resiliency strategy. What we recommend and we support our customers with today is we help them do cyber program maturity assessments. We validate, we help them assess where they stand today across the various cybersecurity controls from a detect, protect, respond, recover, containment strategy perspective, from people, process, and technology. Identify where could be those low-hanging fruits which require plugging in immediately. Identify what could be their short-term and long-term roadmaps, and what could be their focus areas. Help them bring in more of a platformized journey, which can help them consolidate, integrate, automate, as well as bring in the right defense mechanisms using threat intelligence, using the power of AI and ML, and the right set of managed services so that they can have a much more cyber resilient framework for their organizations to protect from.
Saurabh, over to you. What do you think, from your perspective, your advice to the audience on how to counter these emerging threats?
Now, thank you, Anna. I think if I just have to summarize, 99.99% threats and risks originate from outside the perimeter of an organization. You need to have that visibility. I'm not saying that do not strengthen your perimeters. I'm not saying that do not have those remediations within your perimeter. But have a visibility which is personalized and relevant to your organization as to what are those external threats and risks which are coming your way. And this needs to be very relevant and prioritized. It should not be an information overload that somebody asks for an information and I'm passing him 1 million IOCs and telling him go figure out which are relevant for you and remediate, because the amount of time and effort they will be spending in that, they would have already lost the bus. So have that neuro center, have that understanding of those external threats and risks, or what we call an external threat landscape, and then work with the right partners, the right partnership. As an example, LTIMindtree and CYFIRMA, which has the right technology and the right set of people with the right understanding to help our BFSI customers really be one step ahead of those evolving risks and threats. This can be a winning and the right combination of defending against any of those cyber threats and risks that BFSI on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, is already seeing.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you, Dilip. It has been there's so much more we can talk about when it comes to cybersecurity in this particular industry. We are way over time. Would love to take some questions as well. So to audience in the call, please feel free to drop an email to the team if you've got any burning question, and we'd love to invite everyone to check out cyfirma.com/research. That's where you can get the latest around malware, threat actors, and campaign. And when it comes to cybersecurity, do not forget about cyber situational awareness, right? Now, knowing what's happening is extremely key to stay on top of all these new threats. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you, Dilip. We shall meet again very soon.
Pleasure, Anna and Saurabh. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dilip. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Sarah. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. That's all the time we have. If you're interested in learning more about our solutions, our team is ready to help. You can reach out to us at info@ltimindtree.com. I'd like to thank Anna, as well as our speakers, Saurabh and Dilip, and a special thanks to you, our audience, for spending the last hour with us. You can check out our LTIMindtree events webpage and social channels for more upcoming events. Thanks again. Have a great day, and we hope to see you at another event soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.